When I first moved into this neighborhood, I thought I had finally escaped the chaos of city life. The houses were lined with trimmed hedges. Kids laughed as they played hopscotch in the driveways, and the sound of sprinklers ticking in the early evening gave the street a picture-perfect calm. My porch became my sanctuary, the spot where I could sip coffee in the morning and watch the sun dip below the horizon at night. For the first few weeks, I thought I had found the kind of peace people spend years chasing. I wanted to believe that nothing could disturb that fragile sense of comfort, that maybe I'd stumbled into a place where neighbors truly respected each other. But looking back now, I realize I mistook silence for safety, and the cracks were already forming beneath the surface. It all started with a simple Amazon delivery, one of those everyday conveniences you don't think twice about. I had ordered a set of tools I'd been saving up for, something I needed to finally finish building the workbench in my garage. When the tracking email hit my inbox, I felt that small rush of excitement, the kind you get when something new is on its way to make your house feel more like a home. By evening, the notification confirmed the package was delivered, left safely on my porch. But when I got home, the porch was bare. At first, I thought maybe the delivery service made a mistake, or maybe a neighbor picked it up for me as a kind gesture. I checked my camera footage to be sure, and what I saw made my stomach drop. The grainy video showed a familiar figure walking briskly up my steps, glancing left and right as if to check if anyone was watching. She was tall, blonde hair pulled back into a tight bun, clipboard tucked under her arm like it was glued there. Without hesitation, she scooped up my package and walked away as casually as if it had been hers all along. I froze, staring at the screen in disbelief. It wasn't a stranger. It wasn't a porch pirate. It was my neighbor, Karen Whitfield, the president of the HOA, the same woman who had greeted me with a forced smile the week I moved in. The next morning, I caught her by the row of mailboxes. My heart hammered in my chest, but I forced myself to speak up. "Karen," I said, trying to keep my voice even, "I know you took my package. I saw it on my camera." For a second, I thought I saw a flicker of guilt flash across her face, but it vanished just as quickly. She straightened her shoulders, narrowed her eyes, and spoke with the kind of authority that didn't belong in a conversation between neighbors. "Excuse me? I was protecting it. You should be grateful someone's looking out for your things. Porch pirates are everywhere." Her words hit me like a slap. But before I could respond, her two children bounded up behind her. One tugged on her sleeve and asked, "Mom, are we going home?" She turned on me with a voice sharp enough to slice glass, loud enough for the entire street to hear. "See? This is why you don't talk to people like him. He's embarrassing himself in front of children." My face burned as I realized neighbors were peeking from their windows, pretending not to watch but definitely listening. I wasn't the victim in her story. I was the villain, the unreasonable one. Karen had twisted reality in broad daylight, and the worst part was, people seemed to believe her. The package incident should have ended there, but instead, it marked the beginning of a slow and suffocating war. A week later, I opened my mailbox to find a crisp envelope with the HOA seal on it. Inside was a notice fining me $50 for leaving my trash cans out too long. I had rolled them back in just 2 hours after pickup. But according to the paper, that was already a violation. I tried to laugh it off at first, telling myself it was probably a clerical mistake. Yet deep down I knew Karen had her fingerprints all over it. The timing was too perfect, the wording too sharp. Like she had been waiting for her first excuse to put me in my place. Not long after, another notice appeared, this one for unapproved lawn decorations. I remember standing in my driveway, holding the paper in one hand, staring down at the so-called offense in disbelief. It was nothing more than a welcome mat my sister had gifted me, a simple design that said "Home Sweet Home." Somehow, that was considered disruptive to the neighborhood aesthetic. I crumpled the paper in my fist, my jaw tightening as I realized this wasn't about rules, it was about control. Karen wasn't just nitpicking. She was deliberately targeting me, finding fault in things nobody else would ever care about. At first, I tried to comply. I thought if I played by her rules, maybe she would lose interest and move on to someone else. I made sure the trash cans were hauled in within minutes of pickup. I put the welcome mat in my garage, even though it felt like stripping away a piece of my home. I even pulled weeds every weekend just to make sure my lawn was spotless. But the notices didn't stop. They escalated, each more ridiculous than the last. I was fined for a single dandelion poking through my yard. Another time, she wrote me up for leaving my blinds open in the evening because it disrupted the uniform look of the street. Neighbors began to notice what was happening, though most were too afraid to say anything directly. Some would pass me quietly and mutter, "Hang in there, she's been like this for years." Others avoided eye contact completely, quickening their steps as if they didn't want to be caught speaking to me. The isolation was worse than the fines. It felt like Karen had poisoned the air between me and the community, painting me as the troublemaker while she paraded around as the guardian of order. I started to question myself at night, staring at the violation letters stacked on my desk. Was I overreacting, or was I truly being pushed into a corner? The breaking point came with another delivery, one far more personal than a box of tools. I had ordered a custom-engraved frame to hold a picture of my father, who had passed away years earlier. The package was supposed to be special, something to honor him in my home. But when I checked my porch after receiving the delivery notification, the box was gone. My chest tightened as I rushed to the camera feed. And there she was again, Karen, walking up the steps with that same clipped stride, lifting the package without hesitation. She glanced into the camera this time, her lips curving into a smirk. She mouthed something, slow and deliberate. Words I couldn't quite hear but could feel in my bones. She was daring me. That night, I sat in my living room, surrounded by every violation notice I had received, the stack thick enough to look like a lawsuit waiting to happen. I laid them out across the table, one by one, studying the signatures at the bottom. That's when I noticed something odd. All of them carried Karen's signature alone. No initials, no second name, nothing. My hands trembled as I flipped through them, realizing the pattern was consistent. The HOA bylaws clearly stated that fines required at least 2 board members' approval. Karen hadn't followed her own rules. She had been issuing fines as if she were judge, jury, and executioner, and no one had bothered to stop her. The discovery gave me a surge of adrenaline, but I knew I had to be careful. Karen thrived on intimidation, and if she caught wind that I had found her weak spot, she might double down in ways I couldn't predict. The next morning, as she strutted down the sidewalk with her clipboard tucked under her arm like a weapon, I forced myself to act casual. "Karen," I said smoothly, "about those fines. You might want to double-check the paperwork. I'd hate for anyone to notice the missing signatures at the next meeting." Her face didn't crumble, but there was the smallest twitch at the corner of her mouth, the kind of flinch someone makes when you press against a bruise. 2 days later, I filed a request for a special HOA meeting. The board was reluctant at first, but once I presented the bylaw violations in writing, they had no choice but to gather. The room was packed that night. Neighbors who had avoided me for weeks now sat shoulder to shoulder, buzzing with curiosity. Karen marched in late, her children trailing behind her, arms crossed, chin high, as if the entire meeting was a personal inconvenience. She didn't even sit down, just stood at the front like she owned the space, daring anyone to challenge her. But when I walked up to the projector and clicked play on the video of her stealing my packages, the room went silent except for the soft whir of the machine. Gasps echoed as the footage played, Karen lifting my box, smirking at the camera, walking away with what wasn't hers. I didn't stop there. I laid out the stack of fines on the table, each missing the required signatures, each a reminder of her abuse of power. Then I projected the clause from the bylaws, highlighted in bright yellow, showing the exact requirement she had ignored. A murmur rippled through the room as neighbors exchanged glances, the weight of realization settling in. One man muttered under his breath, "She's been scamming us this whole time." Another shook his head and whispered, "No wonder we've all been paying so much." Karen's face flushed crimson, but she didn't back down. She spun toward me, her voice trembling but sharp enough to cut glass. You're humiliating me in front of my children." Her kids clung to her sides, their wide eyes flicking between us in confusion. She tried to shift the narrative the way she always did, making herself the victim, but the room no longer belonged to her. A board member cleared his throat and announced, "Effective immediately. We're filing a motion to suspend her authority pending investigation." Karen's jaw dropped, her clipboard slipping slightly in her grip as the crowd erupted in whispers. She didn't wait for the vote. She stormed toward the door, her heels clicking like gunshots against the tile, her children scurrying behind her. Before stepping out, she turned back, her eyes locking on mine with a look that made my skin crawl. "This isn't over," she hissed, her voice low and venomous. "You'll regret this." The room fell silent again as the door slammed shut, leaving her threat hanging in the air like smoke. Neighbors who once avoided me now nodded in quiet solidarity, some even patting me on the back, but I couldn't shake the image of her glare. It wasn't defeat in her eyes, it was a promise of what was still to come. "So what would you have done if Karen stole your Amazon packages and then screamed that you embarrassed her in front of her kids? Do you think I went too far or not far enough? Would you ever trust an HOA again after this? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I want to hear your take. And if you've had a nightmare neighbor of your own, share your story. It might just end up in a future video. Don't forget to hit like if you think Karen finally got what she deserved, and make sure to subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss the next insane HOA drama. Trust me, you won't believe what happens next.